I had a cold chicken sandwich on my 75th birthday, while my son toasted champagne by the hotel pool with my credit card. That's not how birthdays are supposed to go. Especially not a milestone like 75. Especially not when you've given your whole life to your family. But that was my reality. Sitting alone in my modest kitchen in Tucson, Arizona, listening to the hum of the refrigerator and the distant rattle of wind chimes outside, a single plate in front of me, a slice of lemon cake I'd bought for myself, and the sandwich I made because I didn't want to waste the dinner I'd prepared for a table of 5. I remember staring at that plate for a long time, not eating, just existing, listening to the silence. Not even the television was on. I didn't want to fake background noise. I needed to feel it. That's when I said the words out loud. How does a mother become the one who's left behind? And I meant that, not just in the physical sense being the only one not on a beach or at a table full of laughter. I meant emotionally, spiritually. How do the people you poured your soul into forget that you are still alive? Let me back up. I'm Elaine Montgomery, retired nurse, widow, born in 1948. I've lived in the same house for 42 years. I raised my son Ethan here. Changed diapers in the same bathroom I now use to soak my aching knees. I cooked 1,000 meals in this kitchen. Laughed and cried over this very counter. I buried my husband Harold 12 years ago, and since then, this house has been quiet, but steady. I don't need much. I never have. But I did hope this year would be different. Back in February, Ethan called me, said they were planning something special for my 75th. A real getaway, he told me. You just bring your favorite sandals and that sundress you love. We'll handle the rest. I'll admit it, I felt a flutter in my chest, like I was being seen again. Like maybe, just maybe, I wasn't an afterthought anymore. I hadn't been to the ocean since Harold passed, and the thought of smelling salt water again, of hearing seagulls, of seeing my granddaughter Lily play in the waves, it lit something up in me. But that night, my birthday, there were no waves, no cake, no visitors, just me. And that damn sandwich. The house smelled like rosemary and baked macaroni. I'd set the good china. I'd lit the tall white candles I usually saved for Easter. I wore the floral blue dress Harold used to say made me look 10 years younger. I even curled my hair. By 5 p.m., I was pacing. By 6 o'clock, I was checking the window every 3 minutes. By 7:30, I stopped trying to keep the food warm. And by 9 o'clock, I knew the truth. They weren't coming. No call. No text. Not even a happy birthday, Mama. I didn't cry right away. I just sat there, looking at 5 empty plates. And in the background, I could almost hear Harold's voice again. He would have never let me spend that birthday alone. It all started back in February. Ethan called on a Wednesday afternoon, his voice cheerful, like he was already somewhere sunny. "We've been thinking, Mom," he said. "You deserve something special this year. A real vacation. Palm trees, ocean breeze, the works." I laughed. "You mean like a cruise?" "Even better," he said. "We're booking a resort in Santa Barbara. Full family trip. You haven't had one of those in decades." He wasn't wrong. Since Harold passed, I hadn't been anywhere but the grocery store, church, and the occasional doctor's appointment. I used to dream about getting in the car and just driving west toward water, toward something blue and alive, but life doesn't always leave room for dreams. Especially when you're living on a fixed income and have to budget for both heating bills and prescriptions. But when Ethan offered, I felt like a window had opened. "Just bring the nice clothes, Mama," he said. "Let us handle the rest." So I did what mothers do when they finally feel like they matter again. I started preparing. I bought a new suitcase, purple, soft-sided, on sale at the outlet near the Walgreens. I left the tag on and placed it by the front door. I started packing early, little by little. A sundress with hibiscus print, the pearl earrings Harold gave me on our 25th anniversary, a tube of lipstick I hadn't worn in 6 years. My worn-out paperback copy of Their Eyes Were Watching God, and lastly, Harold's handkerchief pressed, folded for comfort. Every time I passed that suitcase, I felt a flicker of joy. Not because of the trip itself, but because my family had thought of me. Because my son remembered that his mother was still here, still hoping for one more good memory. I didn't tell anyone how much it meant. I didn't want to sound desperate, but in truth, I started counting down the days. I circled the week of my birthday in red on the kitchen calendar. I watched the weather on the news, hoping it wouldn't rain. I even laid my sandals on the doormat, as if that would make the moment come faster. When April came and went, I asked Ethan if we had locked in the dates. "Still working on it," he said. "Just trying to get Lily's school schedule lined up." I nodded, though something in me tensed a little. Still, I trusted him. He was my only son. The night before my birthday, I got a call. Ethan's voice sounded rushed, like he was in traffic. "Hey, Mom. Listen, we've got to push the trip a bit. Just a couple of weeks." My heart dipped. "Oh. Well, at least I'll see you tomorrow, right? For dinner?" A pause, then, "Of course, we wouldn't miss it." That was enough to keep me going. I told myself plans change. That I was lucky they cared at all. That my expectations shouldn't be too high. But in truth, all I really wanted wasn't the beach, or the resort, or even the dinner. I just wanted to be remembered. To feel, for one night, like someone's priority. I woke up early on my birthday. The sun poured through the kitchen blinds, soft and golden. I turned on my gospel playlist, the one Harold used to hum to on Sundays. I brewed fresh coffee, real coffee, not instant, and tied on my apron. I spent the whole morning cooking. Fried chicken, yams with cinnamon, macaroni with 3 cheeses, fresh green beans sautéed with garlic, and a sweet potato pie, homemade, crust fluted just the way Harold liked it. I even used real vanilla this time, not the cheap imitation stuff from the dollar aisle. I brought down the fine china with the gold rim from the top shelf, the kind I only used for Easter and Thanksgiving. I laid out 5 place settings. 1 for me, 1 for Ethan, 1 for Camille, 1 for Lily, and 1 spare, just in case they brought Terrell from next door again like last time. I wore the blue floral dress Harold used to call my sunshine dress. I curled my hair. I lit the tall ivory candles and set them at the center of the table. The house smelled like love. By 5 p.m., I was ready. By 6 o'clock, I started watching the driveway. By 7 o'clock, I reheated everything in the oven. By 8 o'clock, I blew out the candles the wax had puddled down the holders. By 9 o'clock, I knew they weren't coming. No call, no text. Not even a, "We're so sorry, Mom." Nothing. I sat down at the table, hands trembling, staring at 4 empty plates across from me. My lipstick was smudged. My hair had fallen flat. The food had gone cold. I took 1 bite of chicken and set the fork down. It didn't taste like anything anymore. I looked at the birthday card I'd bought for myself, a cheap one from the dollar store with glittery pink letters that said, "You're still glowing." I'd thought it was sweet at the time. Now it felt like a cruel joke. I didn't cry loud, just quiet, the kind of cry that slips out in waves after hours of holding it in, the kind that doesn't ask for comfort because no one's left to give it. I wiped my face with the edge of the tablecloth, cleaned up in silence, wrapped the pie in foil, put the dishes away. changed into my nightgown and sat at the edge of the bed, staring at the purple suitcase still packed by the door. Then, the next morning, Tyrell came knocking. "Morning, Miss Elaine," he said, holding up a plastic bag. "I brought you that lemon dish soap you mentioned last week." I smiled, grateful for the distraction. "You're a sweet boy," I told him. He stepped inside and glanced at my phone on the counter. "Still having issues with your apps?" I nodded. "That thing freezes more than it works. I always hit the wrong button." He offered to take a look and sat at the table, scrolling. I turned back to the sink until I heard him pause. "Miss Elaine," he said softly. "You said Ethan was postponing the trip, right?" I turned to him slowly. "That's what he told me." He looked down, hesitant. "I didn't mean to snoop, but I follow Lily on Instagram." He flipped the screen around. There they were. The entire family, Ethan, Camille, Lily, smiling in matching shirts that read, "Montgomery Family Getaway, 2023, tanned, laughing, posing in front of a beachside resort pool. Fruity drinks in hand, captioned, 'No drama, just sunshine.' The post went up the night of my birthday. I stared at the photo, frozen, and that's when it hit me. They didn't forget. They lied. After Tyrell left, I sat in silence for a long while. No television, no music. Just me and that one photo burned into my brain, my family smiling on a beach I was never invited to. A vacation they told me was postponed. A birthday dinner they never planned to show up for. At first, I told myself maybe it was a misunderstanding. Maybe it wasn't what it looked like. Maybe there was still some version of the story that made it okay. But then I remembered something Ethan had said back in March. He told me he needed my credit card just to lock in the group rate, he'd said. "We'll pay it back, promise." At the time, I didn't question him. He was my son. I trusted him with everything. But now? I opened my old laptop, dusted it off, and waited for it to crawl to life. It took 3 tries to remember the password to my email. My fingers were shaking as I typed the word reservation into the search bar. And there it was, an email confirmation from a luxury beachside resort in Santa Barbara. A full week, ocean view suite, spa add-ons, seafood dinner package. Total bill, $9,824.68. Paid in full. The billing address? Mine. The name on the credit card? Elaine Montgomery. I clutched the edge of the kitchen table to steady myself. They hadn't just excluded me. They used me, lied to me, took my money, the same savings I'd set aside for emergencies, for medical needs, for funeral expenses and toasted cocktails in my name. I sat back in my chair, numb. The refrigerator buzzed behind me. A fly tapped against the window pane. The world kept turning like nothing had happened. But inside me, something cracked. I looked over at the purple suitcase still resting by the front door. Untouched, unneeded, hope folded neatly inside, beside the hibiscus print sundress and Harold's handkerchief. I got up slowly and placed my hand on its handle. It felt heavier now, not because of what it held, but because of what it symbolized. I had packed for a dream, and I was left with a ghost. For the rest of the day, I barely moved. I didn't eat. I didn't answer the phone. I didn't even look outside. That evening, I sat on the edge of my bed again, staring at the ceiling fan as it spun above me. The blades turned like time itself, silent, constant, uncaring. I whispered into the still air. Maybe they forgot. But I already knew the truth. They remembered. They just chose not to come. It was Tyrell who said her name. He'd come by a few days after the beach photos, just checking in like he always did. He brought a loaf of banana bread his grandmother made and asked if I needed help with the trash bins. As he was leaving, he paused by the door. "You ever heard of Miss Nora Decker?" he asked. "She's a lawyer down at the community center. Helps older folks with financial stuff. You know, in case someone's been taking advantage." I didn't say anything right away. But later that night, after the house had gone quiet again, I found her number on a flyer Tyrell had left on the counter. The next day, Nora showed up at my door. Tall, silver twist-out hair. Sensible flats, sharp brown eyes that saw too much but didn't flinch. She carried a canvas bag filled with folders and a no-nonsense presence that made me sit up straighter than I had in weeks. "Miss Montgomery," she said, shaking my hand firmly. "Tyrell said you might want to talk." We sat at the kitchen table. I told her just a little, not everything, enough for her to raise an eyebrow. "Would you mind pulling up your online banking?" she asked gently. I hesitated. Ethan had set most of it up for me years ago. He handled the bills, the auto-pay, told me not to worry about the tech stuff. But I remembered one password. It took a few tries, but we got in. Nora's face changed as she scrolled through my statements. Not with shock. With recognition. Like she'd seen it too many times before. "Miss Montgomery," she said, her voice calm but firm, "you've had over $38,000 withdrawn in the past year, much of it going to a secondary account. In your son's name." I blinked. "He said things were tight. He's been trying to start a business." She pointed to line items on the screen. "This isn't business. This is resorts. Jewelry. Premium electronics. And look here, charges labeled consulting fees paid to a personal Venmo account." My stomach dropped. I looked at her not as a stranger, but as a mirror, and for the first time I saw myself clearly. A woman who had given everything, and had been left with crumbs. Nora closed the laptop gently. "You said you wanted help. I can help. But only if you're ready to stop letting your kindness be weaponized against you." I didn't answer right away. I stared at the vase on the table, the one Harold gave me in '91 after I nursed him through surgery. I thought about every lunch I skipped so Ethan could eat. Every coat I didn't buy so Lily could have ballet shoes. And then I looked Nora in the eyes. "I'm ready," I said quietly. "Let's start." That afternoon, we transferred my funds to a new account, changed every login, revoked Ethan's access to my financials, and began drafting a new will. I didn't feel angry. I didn't feel spiteful. I felt steady, like a woman stepping back into her name. A week later, Ethan showed up. No call, no warning. Just walked right into my house like he did back when he was 16 and still believed I existed to clean up after him. I was folding dish towels in the kitchen when I heard the door creak open. "Hey, Mama," he said, casual. "Too casual. Good to see you. We brought you something." He placed a white paper bag on the table. Inside was a single slice of red velvet cake, wrapped like a party favor from someone else's wedding. There wasn't even a candle. I looked at it, then at him. "That what you brought back from Santa Barbara?" I asked. He froze for a half second, just a flicker, then shrugged. "Oh, so you saw the photos?" "I saw everything," I replied, my voice calm. "The drinks, the hotel, the matching shirts, the bracelet on Lily's wrist, the steak dinner, all of it. On my birthday." Ethan scratched the back of his neck. "We figured you'd be tired. The trip might have been too much." "That's not what you told me," I said. "You told me it was postponed. You told me you were coming to dinner." His expression hardened. "You're blowing this out of proportion. It's just one birthday, Mom. You've had 74 of them." My hands trembled slightly. I gripped the counter to steady myself. It was the first one without your father, I said. And I thought maybe, just maybe, you wanted to spend it with me, not run from me. He let out a deep sigh, like he was the one who was exhausted. You're being dramatic, am I? I stepped out from behind the counter, facing him fully. He looked annoyed now. It's not like we left you with nothing. You had food, a house. You always say you don't need much. And that's the problem, I said. You mistook don't need much for deserve nothing. He scoffed. What is this about, really? I walked to the side table and picked up a plain manila envelope. Inside was a signed copy of my new will. I laid it flat on the dining table between us. This, I said, is about boundaries. Every cent I have savings, bonds. The house is now designated to a women's shelter downtown. Shelter Rose. They help elderly women who've been financially abused by the people closest to them. He stared at me, stunned. You're cutting me out of your will? No, Ethan, I said softly. You did that. The moment you saw me as a means to your next vacation. Behind him, Camille stepped into view. No makeup, no heels. Her mouth tight. I told you this was going to blow up, she muttered to him. You knew? I asked, turning to her. I didn't know it went this deep, she said. I thought you were okay with it. I was quiet, I replied. Not okay. There's a difference. Ethan's face flushed. So that's it? You're done with us? I met his eyes. I'm done pretending this is love. There was nothing left to say. He stormed out, slamming the door behind him so hard the picture of Harold on the hallway shelf rattled. I walked over, straightened the frame, then sat down at my kitchen table. I didn't cry. I smiled not with joy, but with relief. Because for the first time in a long time, I had nothing left to explain. 1 year later, on the morning of my 76th birthday, I woke up without dread. No anxious glances at the driveway, no false hopes, no heavy silences pressing against the windows. I got up, brushed my hair, and slipped into a soft gold dress I'd found at a thrift store 2 months prior. It made me feel radiant. Not young, just alive. I tied a matching shawl over my shoulders and looked at myself in the mirror. For the first time in a long time, the woman staring back wasn't waiting for anyone. She was whole. That afternoon, I arrived at the community center, where I'd reserved the small fellowship room. Nothing extravagant, just enough for a meal, music, and company. On the table, fried chicken, red beans, lemon-glazed pound cake. On the speaker, Mahalia Jackson, her voice sweeping through the room like warm light. On the walls, photos of women from Shelter Rose, strong, smiling, standing tall. Tyrell was the first to show up, carrying 24 flowers and a Bluetooth speaker under his arm. Then came Nora, dressed sharp as always in slate gray slacks, and a blouse the color of cranberry. She winked as she hugged me. You look like peace. More guests trickled in, the ladies from Shelter Rose, some with grandkids in tow, others with canes and quiet grace. We ate, we shared stories, we clapped along to old gospel songs and laughed with our whole chests. And then, just as I was slicing the second cake, the door creaked open. It was Lily. She wore no makeup, no jewelry, no TikTok glam, just jeans, a sweatshirt, and eyes that didn't quite know where to land. She clutched a birthday card in both hands. "Grandma," she said quietly. The room stilled. Conversations softened. "I didn't know," she said, barely above a whisper. "I really didn't. Daddy said you were too tired to travel, that you didn't want to come." I looked at her for a long moment. She was still my granddaughter, the same girl who used to stand on a step stool and help me stir grits with both hands. "It hurt, baby," I said softly. It did. She took a step forward. Am I allowed to stay? I paused, then reached for a plate. Get you a slice of that pound cake before Nora gets to it. She smiled, small, tentative, and joined the circle. I didn't hug her. Not yet. Some things have to be earned again, slowly, like trust soaking into dry soil. Later that evening, Tyrell offered to drive me home. We rode with the windows down, the air smelling like dusk and warm fried food. Was today better than last year? He asked, glancing at me at a red light. I didn't answer right away. I stared out the window at the dusky pink sky over Tucson. It wasn't better, I said. It was mine. When we got home, I stood on the porch for a while. The soft wind touched my face like a blessing. I looked out over my neighborhood, same as always, but somehow different. Then I went inside, changed into my robe, made a cup of tea. I didn't check my phone. I wasn't waiting for a text from Ethan. I didn't need an apology wrapped in guilt or a phone call filled with excuses. I simply sat at my kitchen table, wrapped in my shawl, the steam from my tea rising like prayer, and I smiled. Not because I had everything, but because I had myself back. Sometimes, the people we love the most are the ones who teach us how to love ourselves again. If this story touched you, if it reminded you of someone, or maybe even yourself, don't let it end here. Share it, leave a comment below, and tell us, what does healing look like to you? And if you want more stories like this, stories that speak to your heart, that honor quiet strength, that remind us justice doesn't always roar but sometimes whispers, then hit that subscribe button. Join our community, because out there, someone else is still waiting at their table, and maybe your comment, your presence, your voice, is exactly what they need to hear.